Sir, this isn't a shelter. This is a federal post office. The young white clerk snapped, eyes rolling as he looked at the elderly black man in a faded army jacket. Elijah Turner said nothing. He placed a wrinkled envelope on the counter and pulled a few coins from his pocket, exactly 43 cents short. The clerk scoffed. Then I guess your truth doesn't get delivered today. People in line chuckled. No one stepped forward. Elijah nodded slowly, picked up the envelope and turned, calm, controlled. But his hand trembled just slightly. Outside, the wind tugged at his jacket. He sat on the bench, staring at the government seal on the building. That letter contained names, accounts, records. It had taken him 2 years and everything he had left. And now it sat in his lap, undeliverable. But behind the glass, someone watched. A young mail sorter, probably no older than 20, paused and walked toward the door. "Sir, I'll cover the cost. You served. Let me do something that matters." Elijah looked up, stunned. He didn't smile. He just asked, "Do you know what happens when you mail the truth?" The girl blinked. "No, sir." "Sometimes it burns the whole thing down." By noon the next day, the letter had arrived at its destination, a small newsroom in Richmond, Virginia. Inside, investigative reporter Carla Mendez opened the unmarked envelope. No return address, just the government seal and a single line. "If you publish this, protect the whistleblower. He served." Attached were internal memos, scanned receipts, and a handwritten timeline, documenting years of embezzlement within the Department of Veterans Affairs. Carla's jaw tightened. Who is this guy? Her editor looked over her shoulder. "This could ruin careers." "Or save lives," she whispered. Back at the post office, Elijah returned the next day. Unnoticed, same coat, same slow steps. He wasn't there to be thanked. He was just there to see if it had moved. Instead, he saw the young clerk again. "You again?" the clerk sneered. "Lose another 43 cents?" Elijah paused, then calmly said, "Do you know what the difference is between a stamp and a soldier?" The clerk laughed. "What, Grandpa?" Elijah leaned closer. "One gets stuck. The other moves things." The next morning, the headlines hit. VA scandal exposed. Billions missing. Veterans left to suffer. News outlets from Washington to San Diego ran with it. Live broadcasts, whistleblower protection demands, congressional hearings called within 48 hours. The anonymous veteran was praised nationwide, but at the post office, silence. Elijah stood in line again, his presence like a shadow nobody wanted to acknowledge. Until the station manager, Mr. Rollins, stormed out of his glass office. "You!" he barked, pointing at Elijah. "You caused this chaos? We got reporters calling us nonstop." "I mailed a letter," he replied.
"Yeah? Well, now they're saying we let it happen. I could lose my job." Elijah's face remained still, but his eyes burned. "I lost a son waiting for help that never came," he said, voice low. "You're worried about your job?" The room froze. The clerk from before looked away, suddenly unsure. But it wasn't over. Mr. Rollins lunged forward, grabbed Elijah's envelope bag, and yanked it. Papers scattered, photos, documents, some still stained with coffee rings, fluttered to the floor. No one helped him pick them up, until one hand reached down, then another. A veteran in a wheelchair, a woman in scrubs, a teenager in Army cadet uniform. Outside, rain began to fall, gentle at first, then hard. Elijah sat under the awning, soaked but unmoved. The crowd inside the post office stayed frozen, some embarrassed, some conflicted, but Carla Mendez was already on her way. She arrived not as a reporter, but as a citizen with a camera and a voice. "Mr. Turner?" she said softly, kneeling beside him. "How do you know my name?" he asked. She smiled, holding up the last page of the documents. Scrawled in pen, Elijah Turner, Staff Sergeant, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. She turned to face the building and held her phone up. "The man you humiliated, he's the one who just changed history." Inside, Mr. Rollins stepped back, visibly shaken. The clerk fumbled to close the blinds, but it was too late. The video was already streaming. Hundreds watched live as Carla said, "He never asked for praise. He asked for a stamp and got spit instead." Elijah didn't speak, but in his lap sat that same green envelope, this time stained from rain, not rejection. And from the doorway, the young mail sorter placed a dry towel over his shoulders. 3 weeks later, Congress passed emergency reforms to the Department of Veterans Affairs. Several officials resigned. 2 were indicted, and a new bill, the Turner Act, was introduced to protect veteran whistleblowers. But Elijah never gave another interview. He went back to the post office one last time. Same hour, same bench. No press, no speeches. The building was quiet. The clerk, gone, transferred. Mr. Rollins, retired early. And in the lobby, a new plaque now hung. In honor of Staff Sergeant Elijah Turner, for the letter that spoke when no one else would. He stood before it, hat in hand. His fingers traced the metal edge. A child passed by with his father, paused and whispered, "Dad, was he a hero?" The man answered, "No, son, he was more than that." And Elijah turned, nodded, and walked into the light rain. No parade, no applause. Just footprints that led away from the door. Wet, steady, real. He never looked back. Because sometimes the loudest revolutions begin with silence. Elijah Turner never raised his voice, but his silence, his letter, spoke louder than any speech. This story reminds us, dignity doesn't require noise, only truth. Even the smallest act, like paying for someone's stamp, can shift history. If Elijah's courage moved you, subscribe for more true stories that matter. Comment below. Have you ever witnessed quiet strength change everything?